All right. I'm gonna try to wrap this one up. They say Rome wasn't built in a day, and paternalism wasn't explained in a day. But I had just a couple of things to help me say what I want to say. So, um, I had a friend, right, and he was about 3 and 4 years older than me, and he was always tagging along some kids way younger than him and getting over on them because he had the advantage of being older, and he was helping us waste our time. And I think he also wasted enough of his own time that he didn't get right off into college. They call that matriculate when you go to college, and he didn't get into college, and he had like he had a horrible track record in life, like around other people, but also in school he had a horrible track record. But his father was very savvy and was like, he had been like a police officer in Africa, and then he was a nurse in America. And people would be like, how did you go from being a police officer to a nurse? Like what did that have anything to do? And he was also commending me to be a nurse when I was very young. Like, yeah, I want you to be a male nurse. Forget all this other stuff. Be a male nurse. Why would I want to be a male nurse? Because that's where the money is. So a police officer and a medical person, what they might have in common is that they're interested in making money hand over fist. So that's what he was about. But he was savvy, and so he helped get his son up into college when his son had a horrible track record. But he also knew how things are done at the school. So he knew what person to talk to, what counselor to do this, what this and that, with this and that. So he got his ass into school when he had a horrible GPA. So what I wanted to say is that you imagine different things of like privilege and entitlement in our society, and it would probably involve a fair amount of smudging, is what I appreciate. So I've done different licenses, like I've had professional licenses, and each time I go up, when I'm in a little cohort of people training with me, there's always some guys that are like, yeah, they know about all how this and that, yeah, and this is what they're testing for, and this is probably what they're going to ask us about. But then when it comes to doing detail, like the guy's like, okay, so would you guys want to walk this out for me? Would you want to go along the line just to show how it's done? No, hell no. We just want to get the test over with. That's their attitude, because they're just trying to get into some little privileged, entitled position. They know a lot about how things are done, but they're not actually paying attention to detail or wanting to do things right. That's a lot of how life is. So how do people get into, so all I meant to say is that most people with some form of entitlement and privilege, there would be some smudging that would go along with that. Whether they're in like a financial position, an educational position, what have you, there'd be a little bit of smudging that would go along with that. So you watch a lot of like YouTube content, and sometimes you hear people say, oh yeah, man, the algorithm, this and that, is effing me over, this and that. I think that they might actually not be wrong, because I did a video before this one, and I was explaining what an actual principality is. So a lot of people, you would read things like in a scripture referring to a principality and not know what it's talking about, or think that it's incredibly wicked when it didn't have to be. But my appreciation is that a principality is it's not different than a municipality. So I had a pastor that lived in a area with a reputation, and he was saying that, and it's across a waterfront separates two cities, two sister cities. But anyone from the area can appreciate that things are done differently across these two cities. The city actually has a gangster history. So you had gangsters coming through here near from Chicago, going back in the times of teetotaling, speakeasy, prohibition. There was a bypass of Chicago to this area where they could hide away from the law in Chicago. They could tuck away money. They could fraternize. They could frolic, and they could evade law enforcement. And they had a cozy relationship with the law enforcement here where we are. But then if you go just across the river to a sister city, they couldn't pull the same thing off there because they just were simply too greedy over there. They wanted too much money, so they had to take it over here. That's actually an example of principalities, which is that you have different lines of authority, politics, both overt politics and de facto politics, any environment, any job setting, any educational setting, what have you. You have an above board power structure and a below board that is assumed implicit de facto power that is likely as powerful, if not powerful, as what's above board. And what's above board can almost be a pretense, a pretext, a pretense, and a sounding board that is a cover of the actual real baseball, real politics that is underground, or that is just implied and understood, is the de facto. Both of that combined to make the lines of territory, district, the authority, all that, it combines to make what's called principality, and that's referred to in the scriptures, but not understood. And some people would think that it's more spiritual than it has to be, which it is spiritual because it amounts to eventuality. That is the outcomes that spell life and death to people. So that it's spiritual in that sense because it can have implications leading into and beyond our experience of an individual lifetime. It is what a principality is. But when I made that reference on YouTube, the video, it failed to upload in a significant way because as I made that video, it said verify your identity. And then when I chose to verify my identity, it came to a screen that it was like a dead screen where you couldn't engage it. So it actually deleted the content that I uploaded. That's an example of like how it is possible that the apparatus could be smudging the uploading of a video, but it's broader than that. And I'm just saying that as a reference. So in society, you would have smudging like that as long as you have privilege entitlement that amounts to outcomes of privilege, that is the standing to enjoy and further our experience upon the earth. That's very potent and contested. So there would have to be a preconception of who gets to win, who wants who to get to win. A person who would design a system. So you say the system this and that. I would imagine whoever conceived a system that we're within would want the advantage of that system to go along the lines of what they value and who they value. You can appreciate that would have to be the case. So with that, so you want to isolate and steer advantage. That's not nature, because nature is vital and dynamic and near about random. You have chaos and order together. But if you overlay a preconception onto that, you would have to be arbitrary at some point. Therefore, you'd have to smudge something at some point, and that's a lot of what we have. One of the main functioning of that is conjecture. I appreciate. So, an example is that. So somebody walks in here. I'm in a coffee shop, right? And then they walk out. Sometimes you can hear things, and I have a little bit stronger sense of hearing than most people. Actually, from listening to the music, most people think that it destroys your hearing, but I think it can make your hearing stronger within modest levels. But you walk out of somewhere and say, yeah, he probably lives with his mom, or he's probably this and that. When you say probably like that, you are actually introducing a wicked conjecture, because you have no idea. You cannot fathom whether or not I live with my family. For a long time, I actually did live with my family. So someone say, he probably lives with his mom, and they were damn right, but they didn't know it, so they were damn wrong for saying that. Or I walk into a place and they say, he probably lives with his mom, and I don't, so they're damn wrong for saying that, and they're damn wrong because I actually don't at this point. But they had overlaid conjecture, so the probability that a male of color would walk in somewhere and have the standing to not be beholden to his family or to a bogus employer that's like family, that would be beyond the probability of a lot of people's experience of life. So they're not wrong for saying probably, because that's how they understand probability. Yet they overlaid, they wrote off my standing as an adult when they did that, because you would not have the standing of an adult if you're beholden to your family. It's appreciated in the values of mores of society. So they introduce a wicked conjecture like that. But it's not different than when they apply these different derogatory, condemning terminology onto human beings upon the lines of quasi-science, that is a professional opinion introduced as a scientific objective reality. When you call a person different titles of say mental health, which you cannot prove scientifically. So you're saying, okay, you look like this to me. I've read this many books. Wow, I've highlighted and appreciated the terminology of this many books. I probably didn't do research, but I did that much. So you remind me of this other person that we can appreciate was crazy. So you would have to be crazy, probably. So I haven't seen you try to eat something crazy, say something crazy, do something crazy. But you remind me of this one and that one. Therefore, I'm conveying the ignoble title of this and that condition. So that's what happened there. But it's like that smudging like that. So you actually just smudged some of my outcomes potentially professionally if you had done so in a medical standing. Or if I walk through a venue like this because we all are beholden to our reputation. We live and die by our reputation. So I walk through somewhere, I don't say nothing to nobody, and you say that fool probably lives with this one, that part is probably this and that. So then I walk back in there the next day, and people are gonna approach me differently based off that hearsay conjecture, that wicked gossip that was applied to me. That wicked gossip in a coffee shop is not different than some so-called than some medical professionals introducing